something from myself. She said, "I have to lie down. The envelope needs to be above my head when it starts. Will you do me one more favor?" I nodded. This had started to feel sacred and inevitable, and I was unable to take back the decision I had made. I only had one chance to make it. She said, "Climb the tree and hang your hand down to me. It's no good for climbing. There's got to be someplace you can sit." She got onto the ground, and I positioned the envelope over her eyes and nose so that only her mouth peeked out. It started to expand immediately. I told her I was in the tree even though I wasn't, and I hung my hand down to her. She played with my fingers until the change came, and then I watched her rise, no longer able to speak or laugh because her throat and lips were buried beneath a high column of red flame. I tried to grab her hand as she went higher, but I missed it. She set the old cypress on fire, and it burnt quickly and easily, and it took much of the grass with it. The wind took her away over the trees and over the city, and past the unsympathetic chopping block of the horizon line, and I went back into the city and told of the fire, and then to the barracks, and tried to vomit up the curdled milk in my belly, and I failed. I fought with the National Urban Defense Army for 6 more years. I killed many men, and many men died next to me, and I swallowed them all and kept them in my belly. I left Cordray and went on the road with the National Crusaders to wipe out the revolutionaries wherever we found them. I rose to the rank of colonel. I set fire to a bungalow outside of Akonda because from the window we could see the flag of the revolutionaries hung in brash, challenging prominence, and I hid in the woods while the fire chewed through the beams and the roof, and I shot down the 3 revolutionaries who ran outside, one very fat man and 2 women, one fat and old, one not very much younger than me. I presided over the public beheading of a revolutionary leader from a stage set up in the hamlet of Lo Centino, and I asked the executioner to use my saber so that it might be honored by the death of another pestilent rat, and thereafter I picked up the head of the man and howled at the crowd, "Do you see what happens to perverts and psychopaths?" before flinging the thing into their midst. I killed children, and thereafter dreamed of being murdered in my sleep, with a hunger and desire that towed the edge of obsession. And I no longer cared about war. I was not young, and I was not patriotic, but I readied my rifle and slept in shifts, not because I believed in the cause or the nation or the species, but because I was bored and angry, and the war occupied the former and stoked the latter. For a while. I saw her again flying over a battlefield in Karsten. I almost missed her. The sky was the same color as her head, and she floated over me without a noise. I shot a young man from his horse and laughed. Then someone shot my horse in the hind leg, and he tumbled backward, throwing me off. And lying in the dirt, I saw her. The tension and weight of her muscles was gone. Her arms and legs floated and swayed and danced, and even though I could not see her face, I will swear, here and until my death, that she was happier than any girl before or since her. Happy for a simple sunset moment, red and brown and old, that allowed her to float over dead and dying men, and happy for every moment after. They put me in the Karsten prison, and they gave me an ultimatum. I could die, or I could renounce the National Crusade and side with the revolutionaries. Propagandized as a dead man, or propagandized as a living one. I told them I would very much like to die. Still, as the days and weeks moved forward, and as I sat on a cold, wet stone floor and let my fine beard go to shit and began to smell of mildew and grew sores on the bottoms of my feet, and as I awaited the triumphant moment of my public execution, I could not shake the image of her from my mind. I saw her in the shadows of the stone ceiling, in the cracks of the floor, lying on the hard cot and turning from my back to my belly and wondering where in the world she was now. Whether she thought of me, or only of joy, or if the fire had obliterated her ability to think at all, and whether or not that might be better, more pure, happier than the alternative. They came to me at last and gave me one more chance, and I made my decision, born from the desire to see her one last time, to climb the highest tree and latch on to her dangling feet and pull myself up and find her lips and kiss them, or failing that, to shoot her down with my rifle and give myself a reason to die. They said that they didn't want me if I couldn't believe, truly and sincerely, in the cause of the revolution. I told them that I didn't even know what the cause was, and they told me that nobody did. That wasn't the point. Knowing something was not prerequisite for believing in it. And I said, sure, fine. I stayed in hotel rooms while the troops stayed in tents. I sipped whiskey and smoked my pipe. Cigarettes were out of fashion among the revolutionaries, seen as common and anti-intellectual. While the soldiers killed and were killed, I made speeches and met with sympathetic sponsors and went to bed early. I was worth more alive than dead, as a symbol of the rightness and righteousness of the revolution. I crept away and climbed trees. On many occasions, I have been asked to provide some profound snippet of personal experience to sum up the revolution, something for the benefit of future generations, something to be skimmed and forgotten in history books, and I have always obliged. It's easy to fake enthusiasm. People don't want details, they want poetics. This works out well for me because I don't remember any of the details. I remember each battle before my 30th birthday as the same battle, glimpsed from the safety of a hotel room or a tree branch, itching with an anger that drove me toward the fray. An anger only held in check by the constant awareness that I could not allow myself to die until I had joined the girl with the hot air balloon head, or brought her down. I remember weeping and cheering, which sound pretty much the same, from beneath strange blankets in strange rooms. What I say when I am asked for this snippet is this: blood spilled in the cause of freedom is sacred. It is the only sacred thing in the world. People like that, I guess. I was never a very good man. But damn, each step I ever took, I would have made one hell of a balloon. I was made president of the new republic when I was 37, and I accepted on the condition that I would not have to do anything for the rest of my life. The new government boys, the ones who found enough of themselves left over after the war to give a proper fuck about governance, signed papers and made speeches, and I nodded and looked distinguished, and sneaked into dark and lonely woods to find adequate climbing trees. I look much older than I am. My physician says that my body is not strong enough to climb trees, that my knees are like rotten driftwood, and my spine is beginning to twist. And I have satisfied myself that he is full of shit. He asked too many questions when I told him to attach the envelope to my shoulders with 4 tiny surgical steel rings, and I answered him in coinage and a stiff glare. I paid a great deal of money to transplant the world's largest tree, a redwood whose height is, I understand, uncanny, but whose technical dimensions I never bothered to memorize. I planted it into the back of the presidential estate. I fastened a ladder to its trunk, and I have made a ritual of climbing it every night as the sun begins to set. In the summer, the sunset is the same color as the roaring torch of her head, a smear of livid reds and yellows. In the winter, it is the same color as her plaid sundress. Every night I climb the redwood with my rifle in my hand, in case I do not succeed in grabbing her fingers as she passes. I don't like to think about that possibility, that I might have to shoot her down instead of carry myself up. I weep when I imagine. In my imaginings, I always see her in summer, at the highest point of the tree I can reach, cradling my rifle in my arms. It is a poor substitute for her, but it is sturdy and hard and makes me feel the same. With my wide-brimmed hat and my dark glasses on to keep my vision sharp in the blazing sun, I am always alert and wary in my daydreams. And I always spot her with plenty of time to prepare for her arrival, riding across the clouds, the color of wine spilled on white sheets, with her fingers dangling, swaying like seaweed as though she is already brushing them across my fingertips. And I say, I found you. You were right. I should have kissed you and let you fill me up with fire and carry me away. In the worst of my imaginings, the breeze takes her high and to the left, and my fingers are never long enough to reach hers. And she floats past, and I sight the envelope. I am never crying in the imagined scene, although the real me, the one of flesh and regret, weeps in the act of fantasizing. And I fire. I reload. I fire again. I reload. I fire again. And eventually the envelope collapses, and she plummets toward a patch of ground I can't see. I have never, since the sores burnt my feet in the Karsten cell, spent a moment of awareness not hating myself for this fantasy, for the desire to steal from her the only transcendence she knows, to end her long experiment with happiness by reintroducing her to gravity and to merciless impact. My only comfort is this. In this least loved dream, this is not an act of malice, it is an act of necessity. My girl, you have got to believe me. I don't want to do this, but I have to. I'll never die while you still float. And if I can't join you, well, would she forgive me while she fell? Would she know that she could? Would it occur to her that I would need her to? But there are other fantasies. When the wind is my collaborator, and it sends her to me, and I reach to check the anchors in my shoulders and find them sturdy, I throw my rifle down, and I reach for her fingertips.